Hair's crooked.
Oh, your hair's great.
Thanks.
Hi, everybody. We're back. It's Stories from Your Gaffer. I'm Clint McElroy, and this is my wife, Carol McElroy, with her new haircut. Turn around. Let's see. We have been out. We had some health issues.
We didn't.
You did. Carol had some health issues, but on the mend now, right? Safe to say. So we are almost done with the Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman. And so we hit pause at an inopportune time.
Sorry.
Jack has been, nobody Owens has been dealing with all of the man Jacks, and the only one left is
this is a long one.
The man Jack. And the man Jack is after him and Scarlett. The man Jack followed his nose. He had left the others, not least because the stink of Jack Dandy's cologne made finding anything subtler impossible.
We all know people like that, don't we?
He could not find the boy by scent, not here. The boy smelled like the graveyard, but the girl smelled like her mother's house, like the dab of perfume she had touched to her neck before school that morning. She smelled like a victim, too, like fear sweat, thought Jack, like his quarry. And wherever she was, the boy would be too, sooner or later.
His hand closed around the handle of his knife, and he walked up the hill. He was almost at the top of the hill when it occurred to him, a hunch he knew was true, that Jack Dandy and the rest of them were gone. Good, he thought. There's always room at the top. The man Jack's own rise through the order had slowed and stopped after he'd failed to kill all the Dorian family. It was as if he had no longer been trusted. Now, soon, everything would change. At the top of the hill, the man Jack lost the girl's scent. He knew she was near. He retraced his steps almost casually, caught her perfume again about 50 feet away, beside a small mausoleum with a closed metal gateway. He pulled open the gate and swung it wide.
Her scent was strong now. He could smell that she was afraid. He pulled down the coffins one by one from their shelves and let them clatter onto the ground, shattering the old wood, spilling their contents onto the mausoleum floor. No, she was not hiding in any of those. Then where? He examined the wall, solid. He went down on his hands and knees, pulled the last coffin out, and reached back. His hand found an opening. Scarlett, he called, trying to remember how he would have called her name when he was Mr. Frost, but he could not even find that part of himself any longer. He was the man Jack now, and that was all he was. On his hands and knees, he crawled through the hole in the wall.
When Scarlett heard the crashing noise from above, she made her way, carefully, down the steps, her left hand touching the wall, her right hand holding the little LED key ring, which cast just enough light to allow her to see where she was placing her feet. She made it to the bottom of the stone steps and edged back into the open chamber, her heart thumping. She was scared of nice Mr. Frost and his scarier friends, scared of this room, its memories, even if she were honest, a little afraid of Bod. He was no longer a quiet boy with a mystery, a link to her childhood. He was something different, something not quite human. She thought, I wonder what Mom's thinking right now. She'll be phoning Mr. Frost's house over and over to find out when I'm going to get back. She thought, if I get out of this alive, I'm going to force her to get me a phone. This is ridiculous. I'm the only person in my year who doesn't have her own phone practically. She thought, I miss my mom.
She'd not thought anyone human could move that silently through the dark, but a gloved hand closed upon her mouth, and a voice that was only barely recognizable as Mr. Frost said without emotion, do anything clever, do anything at all, and I will cut your throat. Nod if you understand me. Scarlett nodded.
Bod saw the chaos on the floor of the Frobisher mausoleum. The fallen coffins with their contents scattered all over the aisle. There were many Frobishers and Frobishers and several Pettifers, all in various states of upset and consternation.
He's already down there, said Ephraim.
Thank you, said Bod. He clambered through the hole in the inside of the hill, and he went down the stairs. Bod saw as the dead see. He saw the steps. He saw the chamber at the bottom. And when he got halfway down the steps, he saw the man Jack holding Scarlett. He had her arm twisted up behind her back and a large, wicked boning knife at her neck.
The man Jack looked up in the darkness. "Hello, boy," he said. Bod said nothing. He concentrated on his fade, took another step. "You think I can't see you?" said the man Jack. "And you're right, I can't, not really. But I can smell your fear. And I can hear you move and hear you breathe. And now that I know about your clever vanishing trick, I can feel you. Say something now. Say it so I can hear it, or I start to cut little pieces out of the young lady. Do you understand me?"
"Yes," said Bod, his voice echoing the chamber room. "I understand."
"Good," said Jack. "Now come here. Let's have a little chat." Bod began to walk down the steps. He concentrated on the fear, on raising the level of panic in the room, of making the terror something tangible. "Stop that," said the man Jack. "Whatever it is you're doing, don't do it." Bod let it go. "You think," said Jack, "that you can do your little magics on me? Do you know what I am, boy?"
Bod said, "You're a Jack. You killed my family, and you should have killed me."
Jack raised an eyebrow. He said, "I should have killed you?"
"Oh, yes. The old man said that if you let me grow to adulthood, your order would be destroyed. I did. You failed. You lost."
"My order goes back before Babylon. Nothing can harm it."
"They didn't tell you, did they?" Bob was standing 5 paces from the man. "Those 4, they were the last of the Jacks. What was it? Krakow, Vancouver, Melbourne, all gone." Scarlett said, "Please, Bod, make him let go of me." "Don't worry," said Bod with a calm he did not feel. He said to Jack, "There's no point in hurting her. There's no point in killing me. Don't you understand? There isn't even an order of Jacks of all trades. Not anymore."
Jack nodded thoughtfully. "If this is true," said Jack, "and if I am now a Jack all alone, then I have an excellent reason for killing you both." Bod said nothing. "Pride," said the man Jack. "Pride in my work. Pride in finishing what I began." And then he said, "What are you doing?"
Bod's hair prickled. He could feel a smoke tendril presence twining through the room. He said, "It's not me. It's the slayer. It guards the treasure that's buried here."
"Don't lie."
Scarlett said, "He's not lying. It's true."
Jack said, "True? Buried treasure? Don't make me."
"The slayer guards the treasure for the master."
"Who said that?" asked the man Jack, looking around.
"You heard it?" asked Bod, puzzled.
"I heard it," said Jack. "Yes."
Scarlett said, "I didn't hear anything."
The man Jack said, "What is this place, boy? Where are we?"
Before Bod could speak, the slayer's voice spoke, echoing through the chamber. "This is the place of the treasure. This is the place of power. This is where the slayer guards and waits for its master to return." Bod said, "Jack?"
The man Jack tilted his head on one side. He said, "It's good to hear my name in your mouth, boy. If you'd used it before, I could have found you sooner."
"Jack, what was my real name? What did my family call me?"
"Why should that matter to you now?"
Bod said, "The slayer told me to find my name. What was it?"
Jack said, "Well, let me see. Was it Peter or Paul or Roderick? You look like a Roderick. Maybe you were a Stephen." He was playing with the boy.
"You might as well tell me. You're going to kill me anyway," said Bod. Jack shrugged and nodded in the darkness as if to say, "Obviously." "I want you to let the girl go," said Bod. "Let Scarlett go."
Jack peered into the darkness, then said, "That's an altar stone, isn't it?
"I suppose so."
And a knife and a cup and a brooch."
He was smiling now in the darkness. Bod could see it on his face, a strange, delighted smile that seemed out of place on that face, a smile of discovery and of understanding. Scarlett couldn't see anything but a blackness that sometimes erupted in flashes inside her eyeballs, but she could hear the delight in Jack's voice.
The man Jack said, "So the brotherhood is over, and the convocation is at an end, and yet, if there are no more Jacks of all trades but me, what does it matter? There can be a new brotherhood, more powerful than the last.
Power, echoed the slayer.
This is perfect, said the man Jack. Look at us. We are in a place for which my people have hunted for thousands of years, with everything necessary for the ceremony waiting for us. It makes you believe in providence, doesn't it? Or in the massed prayers of all the Jacks who have gone before us, that at our lowest ebb, we are given this.
Bod could feel the slayer listening to Jack's words, could feel a low sorceress of excitement building in the chamber.
The man Jack said, I am going to put out my hand, boy. Scarlett, my knife is still at your throat. Do not try to run when I let go of you. Boy, you will place the cup and the knife and the brooch in my hand.
The treasurer of the slayer, whispered the triple voice. It always comes back regarded for the master. Bod bent down, took the objects from the altar stone, put them in Jack's open gloved hand. Jack grinned.
Scarlett, I'm going to release you. When I take the knife away, I want you to lie face down on the ground with your hands behind your head. Move or try anything, and I will kill you painfully. Do you understand?
She gulped. Her mouth was dry. She took one shaky step forward. Her right arm, which had been twisted up in the small of her back, was now numb, and she felt only pins and needles in her shoulder. She lay down, her cheek resting on the packed earth. We are dead, she thought, and it was not even tinged with emotion. It felt as if she were watching something happening to other people, a surreal drama that had turned into a game of murder in the dark. She heard the noise of Jack taking hold of Bod. Bod's voice said, let her go.
The man Jack's voice. If you do everything I say, I won't kill her. I won't even hurt her.
I don't believe you. She can identify you.
No, the adult voice seemed certain she can't. And then it said 10,000 years, and the knife is still sharp. The admiration in the voice was palpable. Boy, go and kneel on that altar stone, hands behind your back. Now.
It has been so long, said the slayer. But all Scarlett heard was a slithering noise, as if an enormous coil was winding around the chamber.
The man Jack heard, you want to know your name, boy, before I spill your blood on the stone?
Bod felt the cold of the knife at his neck, and in a moment Bod understood. Everything slowed. Everything came into focus. I know my name, he said. I'm Nobody Owens. That's who I am. And kneeling on the cold stone altar, it all seemed very simple. Slayer, he said to the chamber, do you still want a master? The slayer guards the treasure until the master returns. Well, said Bod, haven't you finally found the master you've been looking for?
He could sense the slayer writhing and expanding, hear a voice, hear a noise, like the scratching of 1,000 dead twigs, as if something huge and muscular were snaking its way around the inside of the chamber. And then, for the first time, Bod saw the slayer. Afterwards, he was never able to describe what he had seen. Something huge, yes, something with the body of an enormous snake, but with the head of a what? There were 3 of them, 3 heads, 3 necks. The faces were dead, as if someone had constructed dolls from parts of the corpses of humans and of animals. The faces were covered in purple patterns, tattooed in swirls of indigo, turning the dead faces into strange, expressive, monstrous things.
The faces of the slayer nuzzled the air about Jack tentatively, as if they wanted to stroke or caress him.
What's happening? Said Jack. What is it? What does it do?
It's called the slayer. It guards the place. It needs a master to tell it what to do, said Bod.
Jack hefted the flint knife in his hand. Beautiful, he said to himself. And then, of course, it's been waiting for me. And yes, obviously, I am its new master.
The slayer encircled the interior of the chamber. Master, it said, like a dog who had waited patiently for too long. It said, master, again, as if testing the word to see how it tasted. And it tasted good. So it said one more time with a sigh of delight and longing, master.
Jack looked down at Bod. 13 years ago, I missed you, and now we are reunited. The end of one order, the beginning of another. Goodbye, boy. With one hand, he lowered the knife to the boy's throat. The other hand held the goblet.
Bod, said Bod. Not boy, Bod. He raised his voice. Slayer, he said. What will you do with your new master? The Slayer sighed. We will protect him until the end of time. The Slayer will hold him in its coils forever and never let him endure the dangers of the world. Then protect him, said Bod. Now.
I am your master. You will obey me, said the man Jack.
The Slayer has waited so long, said the triple voice of the Slayer triumphantly. So long a time. It began to loop its huge, lazy coils around the man Jack.
The man Jack dropped the goblet. Now he had a knife in each hand, a flint knife and a knife with a black bone handle, and he said, Get back. Get away from me. Don't get any closer. He slashed out with the knife as the Slayer twined about him, and in a huge crushing movement, engulfed the man Jack in its coils.
Bod ran over to Scarlett and helped her up. I want to see, she said. I want to see what's happening. She pulled out her LED light and turned it on. What Scarlett saw was not what Bod saw. She did not see the Slayer, and that was a mercy. She saw the man Jack, though. She saw the fear on his face, which made him look like Mr. Frost had once looked. In his terror, he was once more the nice man who had driven her home. He was floating in the air 5, then 10 feet above the ground, slashing wildly at the air with 2 knives, trying to stab something she could not see in a display that was obviously having no effect.
Mr. Frost, the man Jack, whoever he was forced away from them, pulled back until he was spread-eagled, arms and legs wide and flailing against the side of the chamber wall. It seemed to Scarlett that Mr. Frost was being forced through the wall, pulled into the rock, was being swallowed up by it. Now there was nothing visible but a face. He was shouting, wildly, desperately, shouting at Bod to call the thing off, to save him, please, please. And then the man's face was pulled through the wall, and the voice was silenced. Bod walked back to the altar stone. He picked up the stone knife and the goblet and the brooch from the ground, and he replaced them where they belonged. He left the black metal knife where it fell.
Scarlett said, I thought you said the Slayer wouldn't hurt people. I thought all it could do was frighten us.
Yes, said Bod, but it wanted a master to protect. It told me so.
Scarlett said, you mean you knew? You knew what would happen?
Yes, I hoped it would. He helped her up the steps and out into the chaos of the Frobisher mausoleum. I'll need to clean this all up, said Bod casually. Scarlett tried not to look at the things on the floor.
They stepped out into the graveyard. Scarlett said dully once more, you knew what would happen. This time Bod said nothing. She looked at him as if unsure of what she was looking at. So you knew that the Slayer would take him. Was that why you hid me down there? Was it? What was I then? Bait?
Bod said, it wasn't like that. Then he said, we're still alive, aren't we? And he won't trouble us any longer.
Scarlett could feel the anger and the rage welling up inside her. The fear had gone, and now all she was left with was the need to lash out, to shout. She fought the urge. What about the other men? Did you kill them too?
I didn't kill anyone.
Then where are they?
One of them's at the bottom of a deep grave with a broken ankle. The other 3 are, well, they're a long way away.
You didn't kill them?
Of course not, Bod said. This is my home. Why would I want them hanging around here for the rest of the time? Then, look, it's okay. I dealt with them.
Scarlett took a step away from him. She said, you aren't a person. People don't behave like you. You're as bad as he was. You're a monster.
Bod felt the blood drain from his face. After everything he had been through that night, after everything that had happened, this was somehow the hardest thing to take. No, he said, it wasn't like that.
Scarlett began to back away from Bod. She took 1 step, 2 steps, and was about to flee, to turn and run madly, desperately away through the moonlit graveyard when a tall man in black velvet put a hand on her arm and said, I'm afraid you do Bod an injustice, but you will understand to be happy if you remember none of this. So let's walk together, you and I, and discuss what has happened to you over the last few days. and what it might be wise for you to remember, what it might be better for you to forget.
Bod said, Silas, you can't. You can't make her forget me.
It will be the safest that way, said Silas simply, for her, if not for all of us. Don't I get a say in this? Asked Scarlett.
Silas said nothing. Bod took a step toward Scarlett and said, look, it's over. I know it was hard, but we did it. You and me. We beat them.
Her head was shaking gently, as if she was denying everything she saw, everything she was experiencing. She looked up at Silas and said only, I want to go home, please. Silas nodded. He walked with the girl down the path that would eventually lead them out of the graveyard. Bod stared at Scarlett as she walked away, hoping that she would turn and look back, that she would smile or just look at him without fear in her eyes. But Scarlett did not turn. She simply walked away.
Bod went back into the mausoleum. He had to do something, so he began to pick up the fallen coffins, to remove the debris and to replace the tangle of tumbled bones into the coffins. Disappointed to discover that none of the many Frobishers and Frobishers and Pettifers gathered around to watch seemed to be quite certain whose bones belonged in which container.
A man brought Scarlett home. Later, Scarlett's mother could not remember quite what he had told her, although disapprovingly she had learned that nice J. Frost had unavoidably been forced to leave town. The man talked with them in the kitchen about their lives and their dreams, and by the end of the conversation, Scarlett's mother had somehow decided they would be returning to Glasgow. Scarlett would be happy to be near her father and to see old friends again.
Silas left the girl and her mother talking in the kitchen, discussing the challenges of moving back to Scotland, with Nuna promising to buy Scarlett a phone of her own. They barely remembered that Silas had ever been there, which was the way he liked it. Silas returned to the graveyard, found Bod sitting in the amphitheater by the obelisk, his face upset. How is she?
I took her memories, said Silas. They will return to Glasgow. She has friends there.
How could you make her forget me?
Silas said, people want to forget the impossible. It makes their world safer.
Bod said, I liked her.
I'm sorry.
Bod tried to smile, but he could not find a smile inside himself. The men, they spoke about trouble they were having in Krakow and Melbourne and Vancouver. That was you, wasn't it?
I was not alone, said Silas.
Miss Lepescu, said Bod. Then, seeing the expression on his guardian's face, is she all right?
Silas shook his head, and for a moment his face was terrible for Bod to behold. She fought bravely. She fought for you, Bod.
Bod said, the Sleer has the man Jack. 3 of the others went through the ghoul gate. There's one injured but still alive at the bottom of the Carstairs grave.
Silas said, he is the last of the Jacks. I will need to talk to him then before sunrise. The wind that blew across the graveyard was cold, but neither the man nor the boy seemed to feel it.
Bod said, she was scared of me.
Yes.
But why? I saved her life. I'm not a bad person, and I'm just like her. I'm alive too. Then he said, how did Miss Lepescu fall?
Bravely, said Silas, in battle, protecting others.
Bod's eyes were dark. You could have brought her back here, buried her here, then I could have talked to her.
Silas said that was not an option.
Bod felt his eyes stinging. He said, she used to call me Nimini. No one will ever call me that again.
Silas said, shall we go and get food for you?
We? You want me to come with you out of the graveyard?
Silas said, no one is trying to kill you. Not right now. There are lots of things they're not going to be doing. Not any longer. So yes. What would you like to eat?
Bod thought about saying he wasn't hungry, but that simply was not true. He felt a little sick and a little lightheaded, and he was starving. Pizza? He suggested. They walked through the graveyard down to the gates. As Bod walked, he saw the inhabitants of the graveyard, but they let the boy and his guardian pass among them without a word. They only watched.
Bod tried to thank them for the help, to call out his gratitude, but the dead said nothing. The lights of the pizza restaurant were bright, brighter than Bod was comfortable with. He and Silas sat near the back. Silas showed him how to use a menu, how to order food. Silas ordered a glass of water and a small salad for himself, which he pushed around the bowl with his fork but never actually put to his lips.
Bod ate his pizza with his fingers and enthusiasm. He did not ask questions. Silas would talk in his own time, or he would not.
Silas said, "We had known of them, of the Jacks, for a long, long time, but we knew of them only from the results of their activities. We suspected there was an organization behind it, but they hid too well. And then they came after you, and they killed your family. And slowly, I was able to follow their trail."
Is we, you, and Miss Lepescu? Asked Bod.
Us and others like us.
The honor guard, said Bod.
How did you hear about, said Silas then. No matter. Little pitchers have big ears, as they say. Yes, the honor guard. Silas picked up his glass of water. He put the glass to his lips, moistened them, and put it back down on the polished black table. The surface of the table was almost mirrored. They had, and had anyone cared to look, they might have observed that the tall man had no reflection.
Bod said, "So now you're done with all this. Are you going to stay?"
I gave my word, said Silas. I'm here till you're grown.
I'm grown, said Bod.
No, said Silas. Almost, not yet. He put a 10-pound note down on the tabletop.
That girl, said Bod, Scarlett. Why was she so afraid of me, Silas? But Silas said nothing. And the question hung in the air as the man and the youth walked out of the bright pizza restaurant into the waiting darkness. And soon enough, they were swallowed by the night. We have one more chapter tomorrow night.
Harpo's here trying to...
Yes, Harpo's nuzzling, Homer's nuzzling on the other side. No,
here,
not right now. We're
here.
doing our thing.
Come here, Harpy.
We're doing our reading thing, dogs.
Come up here.
No.
Say hi. Come here.
Oh, honey. Oh, Lord.
That's Harpo. That's Harpo, Eugene. Yes, it is. He's a good boy.
Okay. All right. Thank you for...
Wait.
Okay.
Come here. 1, 2, 3.
Okay.
Oh, he doesn't jump.
You see Harpo, you have to see Homer.
Wait a minute, Homer.
Oh, God.
Come here.
While she's getting the...
Oh, my God, he's a tub. That's Homer.
Yes. Listen, we want to thank you for your indulgence, for giving us the time and still coming back, still watching our videos.
Thank you.
We really appreciate you. We're glad to be back. And tomorrow night, we'll wrap up The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman, art by Dave McKean. Until then, stay safe, stay happy, and choose joy. And I've lost the cursor. There it is. There it is. That ruins our big exit.